This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Well, more and more of us are comfortable with talking about our mental health, even saying those two words, mental health. If we went back 30 years, 40 years, you say those words, people look at you funny. They wonder, something's up. Somebody's got a little problem up top there. Now it's like, no. I mean, and you go to the doctor for your physical health. Now we go to somebody for our mental health. So more and more people are doing it. However, there are still some that know they should do it, should talk to somebody, should process their feelings and emotions, but they don't take the next step. What's holding them back? We're going to talk about that today and so much more. And she's somebody that works with lots of people dealing with challenges. It could be any form of psychotherapy, whether it's traumas from the past, PTSD, navigating relationships, and one of her specialties is working with people who have been involved in a serious car accident. And she's back with us. It is Miriam Rosario on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Real good, real good. And what we're talking about today, I believe, is something that people don't talk about. Yes, we talk about mental health. We talk about therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, all good. But there are a lot of us that don't take the next step. We know that we probably should talk to somebody. We know it's probably going to be for the better, but we don't. We hold back or we put it off. Yeah, I'll get to that. Why do you think? What are some of the reasons that you encounter from people that hold off from taking care of their mental health?
Well, some of the reasons would be that they feel ashamed because they aren't able to manage it themselves. Or they don't want somebody else, they don't want to feel judged. And they don't want somebody else to think that they can't manage their own problems.
Okay, so you're feeling that they feel almost inadequate. That I don't need somebody to deal with my I can take care of myself in my situation. Medical, that's different. You get a cold, a sprain, or something like that. There's only so much you can do, but we think that we can take care of our mental health. That's what it sounds like where you're going.
Right. Right. That is exactly what it is. And then some people come from a cultural background where whatever happens stays at home. You don't talk about it. It's taboo.
Well, like we said at the onset, that we're more comfortable with that, but there is still that feeling of taboo for some. And now I'm seeing it differently, that many of us don't want to admit. Yeah, I'm having some struggles dealing with this situation. Now you have to come clean. You have to make the admission. At the first step, you're making it to yourself. And then if somebody else knows, let's say your spouse, partner, that you're going to talk to somebody, I guess even for men, it feels like you're a little weak, maybe.
Well, I believe that. And it's a shame that that's the way that it was, that it's taught and that we learn it. Especially, I guess, now the younger generation is a little bit more open to it, but
Yep.
there's still the older generation that has a hard time with coming to therapy. I mean, just this week I had a client who sat there and he was male, probably in his mid 50s, early 60s, and he was talking about how his mother was in hospice and his struggle with that and how he feels about it, how he doesn't want to watch her die. And, she has recently moved to stay with his older brother in a different state and just feels that, he's just hesitating, and then he feels bad about feeling like that. And as he's explaining how he's feeling, he looked at me and said, "And you're the only person that I've ever said this to." He says, "Because I don't want to be viewed as weak."
Yep. Yep. I believe it. And I mean, it's different for men and women, but certainly for men, like you said, especially of that generation, it's always been said, man up. Big boys don't cry. Be a man. That's been ingrained in men, for decades, and it's hard to break from that mold. Is it
Yeah.
obviously, you've got, long certifications, an incredible resume in this field, but at the onset, is it really just about talking? I mean, even if you didn't say anything, just if somebody was just to open up, that's step one. Do you feel that that's how that works?
Yes, I agree with that. Because we have a lot of emotions sometimes that we don't understand. We may have a reaction that comes from somewhere that we didn't like. We feel like we can't control it. And so talking about how you feel really then moves the emotional part of it over from the back of your head, right, to the front of our frontal lobe, and we begin to hear it differently, and then we get to understand it, and it's once we understand it that the change can happen.
Hmm.
Because if we're all emotional, then we're all emotional and we're not feeling stable. But understanding it and being able to talk about it and taking a step back and observing it makes a big difference.
Is it almost that phrase? You're in your head. I'm in my head right now, where you can't, unless you verbalize it, write it down, you can't even process it because it's all bouncing around in your head. You've got all these different emotions. In that gentleman's case with mom being in hospice, he's trying to deal with that, her declining health, the family, memories when mom was okay, knowing that she's not going to be here soon. All of that. It's like bing, 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 like a ping pong ball bouncing in your head. How do you even get a grip on any of that, right?
Right. And when you actually talk about it, it does settle things down because, like you said, when you're in your head, what happens is it starts to loop and it can get irrational. And
Yes.
so actually listening to what you have to say and hearing it, you get to understand and hear if it's rational or not.
Would you say that it might be impactful when you're alone to talk to yourself?
I think sometimes it's helpful.
Hmm.
It's almost like writing. When you're writing something and you need to proof it, if you read it out loud, you can hear where the mistakes are.
Right.
So I think that, talking to yourself,
Yeah.
depending on what's being said and where your mental state is at, I think a highly functioning person, talking out loud and saying something and hearing it will make a difference.
Um, Depending on what's said is what you said. And yeah, I'm glad you said that because
Mhm.
so many times you call it the monkey chatter in your mind. It's negative. You're saying that negative stuff. And if you're going to say it out loud, whatever you're going to say out loud shouldn't be negative. I'm feeling it should be more of I'm processing this. I've got this situation. I'm trying to decide what's the right way to go and, just talking it over with yourself, but not being negative because it's counterproductive.
Right. Right. And I think that those old tapes that we have that are negative in our head, it's important to understand where they came from
Mm.
and understand that since we can believe the negative, we can also believe the positive and start shifting that.
How does that shift take place? Is that really part of the neuroplasticity that we hear about, the rewiring of the brain? Is that really what we're talking about here?
That is what we're talking about. Just like we can repeat negative things in our head, then we can repeat affirmations in our head that are positive, and it does start to shift. Because if one is possible, then the other is possible as well. Then why is it that the negative is easier to believe than the positive?
Mm. It's almost like conditioning. If you
Yeah,
have a dog and you yell at your dog all the time, not that you should, but if you were, the dog's going to react whenever you walk in the room. They're going to be like, "No," they've been conditioned to
yeah,
to hide or cower down because they don't want to get yelled at. but what's that based on? Previous experience, and the one before that, and the one before that. So if if you're reprogramming yourself with positive feedback, affirmations, or whatever it is, then eventually it's got to stick. It's part of a habit.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it does. It does. It's almost like saying to someone that, you know, I'll ask my client and them saying, "Oh, well, I treat other people a lot better than I treat myself." And it's
Hmm.
taking a step back and thinking, well, why is that? Do you not believe that you deserve to be treated lovingly like you treat this other person? Like, what in your mind makes you think that you're not worthy of that? Like, this is you that we're talking about, right? I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, that is such a classic statement, but I never even thought of that. When people say, "Yeah, I treat other people better than I treat myself," why? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but why? I get
Right.
it. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Still do that occasionally, and then I catch myself.
Hmm.
But then, here we go down another road here. Some are people pleasers. There's reasons for that.
Hmm.
There's many different reasons. Um, Boundaries. We don't put them up. We should. We feel bad. We feel guilty. It's almost, does this all go back to childhood? Most of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Childhood traumas that have happened, you know. Yes.
What are
And
s-
it's sad.
what are some of the other reasons that you hear that people avoid therapy, even though they know they should? They just don't do it.
They're afraid. They don't know what to talk about. They don't know how to start it. They don't know where to begin. They don't know what to say, and I think a lot of it really, the core is based on fear. Fear of being able to process through things and emotionally mature, and then not having an identity, not knowing where to go from there because they're so comfortable with where their life is now and staying in the status quo that they know what to expect, that if anything shifts or changes, what then?
Hmm. Well, that's classic in terms of how we're wired to. We don't want change. It's even if it's uncomfortable to be comfortable, we'll stay there. Even though we might know that's not the best place to be, but we'll just stick with that because that's better than maybe the unknown. And many times we don't
Yeah,
even know we're doing it.
yeah, it is.
When you talk with somebody, maybe a new client, here we go. Tips of the trade, peeling back the curtains. How do you encourage them to open up? I'm sure there's many times people, this is a new process for them. They'll come before you. They don't even know how to approach certain feelings and emotions. How do you kind of open them up?
Well, I asked them if they've had experience with therapy before, and they'll respond. And if they have, then I'll ask how that experience was. And they'll respond there. If they haven't had experience with therapy, then I explain that the first appointment really is general information about everything, and that we start work on the second appointment.
Hmm.
So generally speaking, I just invite them to start wherever they want to be, wherever they believe they should start.
Wow. Um, do you go into, call it a history of that person to identify maybe what childhood was like and maybe how it could translate to the challenges that they're having now?
Yes. And there are general questions that I ask during the intake about their lives, about their relationships, who they're close with, the activities that they're involved with, the friends that they have that they feel are good support for them, if they're active, how they handle stress, and what are their challenges, and what do they feel are their strengths.
What about those of us who are afraid to go back to situations that may have been challenging or maybe traumatic?
I don't ever force it. I always invite them to talk about whatever they're ready to talk about. Because I know that in a therapeutic relationship, it's important to build that relationship, that rapport with one another in order to feel comfortable. Because therapy is very subjective, and it's important that the patient feels comfortable. Because if the person does not feel
Mm,
comfortable, there's no way they're going to be able to talk about whatever it is that they need to talk about.
yep. Yep. And I'm happy you use the word relationship. Quite honestly, I'm probably due for, a little therapy here and there. It's been a while. And for me, it's about the relationship. And I remember having a therapist back in the day and re-engage them, I want to say 7 years later. And it just was different. And this therapist, served a purpose then, and for others, wasn't working for me because they would always focus on the facts and figures, except the
Mhm.
emotions and feelings. And after a while, I'm like, I don't care about that. I didn't say that, but I'm like, I don't care about that. It's not why. Right. If I need somebody to focus on facts and figures, I'll call an attorney or somebody. I don't need that. Um, and then it really is about the relationship. You have to find whoever it is and feel comfortable with them. And some men feel more comfortable talking to women. Some women feel more
Yeah.
comfortable talking to men. It's all, a matter of choice. But I guess you have to go through a little bit of it. Hey, maybe you get lucky and somebody you click with them right away. And the relationship, the therapeutic relationship is fantastic. But if not, then you have to find what works for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very important to to echo what you're saying in the relationship. It's extremely important, even to the point where if you feel uncomfortable, because this is one thing that I do say during the intake, is if you think that there is something that I can be doing better, then let me know. And if there's anything that you need me to help you talk about,
Hmm.
let me know that as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. No judgment. And, I'd have to imagine, even with years of experience and credentials and all of that, every new person that walks through your door, it's a different situation. And you probably pick up on something, maybe a little bit different. Oh, I didn't realize that. In your mind, like, yeah, it's a different way to approach things. But certainly it's not cookie cutter, one size fits all. What
No,
works for somebody else might not work for me.
right.
And you have to be upfront about it, just, and the person that I referred to that was with the facts and figures, he was an older gentleman. I don't think he was getting it anymore. My opinion. Nice person, but it wasn't working for me. And I probably could have said that, but I think he's so stuck in his ways. That's the way he is.
Yeah.
So I moved on. No big deal. It's all good. Then,
Mhm.
but certainly over time, there was value there. I got value there, especially when I initially engaged him. And that was for a situation that presented again in life. We all got them. Situations pop up. What what's your advice for finding a therapist? Here I am, whether it's insurance or not. I've got a directory. What is there questions to ask? Is there anything that you can share with us in finding somebody?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can go to your insurance if people want to use their insurance. Typically, they can ask the health insurance to send them a list of providers
Hmm.
that they can call and talk with. But you want to think about whether you want a male or female, and you want to think about the type of therapy that they do as well. So, different therapists use different methods for therapy. So those are the two things. I mean, if you're paying out of pocket, typically you want to ask somebody if they know someone that they can recommend. But
Hmm.
you would start there and then go through that process.
Real briefly, what are the different types of therapy, or maybe the main types of different therapies?
So there's existential therapy, which I believe includes different types of therapy. And then there's cognitive behavior therapy. There's in vivo therapy, where it puts you into the live situation that you may be frightened of. There's psychotherapy, there's talk therapy, there's psychoanalysis. Um, I don't know, is that enough?
My head is spinning now. I need a therapist to figure out the different therapies. Um, Cognitive behavioral CBT?
Yeah, CBT.
Is that like the basic therapy?
I think that's the one that's the most known therapy.
Okay.
The kind of therapy and the therapy that I'm trained in is actually modern psychoanalysis.
Hmm.
And I chose modern psychoanalysis because I believe that, you know, our issues come from when we were kids. And sometimes, it's even before we were born. And so those issues will come up where you have a hard time explaining them because you weren't able to understand or communicate at that time.
As my journey continues and I do podcasts with people like yourself and research it and live it, I'm on your page. It does go back to mostly go back to our childhood. There's a connection.
Hmm.
Why do we act the way we do now? It goes back. And if you start peeling layers, you're going to figure it out. Maybe have
Right.
an epiphany that might help you move your life forward. Why did you make the decision to also specialize in helping people who have been involved in car accidents?
Actually, a coworker of mine was working with the owner of Pressman and Associates at the time, and she had mentioned that there was an opening, and I became interested in it, and was always interested in EMDR as well, and that's a form of hypnosis.
Hmm.
One of my professors in my grad program was certified in EMDR, so she had talked about that. And I was trained at the time for doing that. And I thought, it would be perfect. I can practice it and help others. And, slowly but surely, since then, I've just become much more involved in it. And I appreciate working with them.
You're getting them after, like, traumas are so big, little, big traumas from our
Mhm.
childhood, but you're working with people where this is fresh and potentially life changing after an accident.
Right.
It's got to be gratifying. Is that when you work with somebody and you work them through the memories of the accident, the triggers and everything? Does it feel good when you feel that they're getting a little bit of, call it relief?
Yes. Yes, it
Mm,
does. And, with every patient, I also build a relationship with.
sure.
So I get to know them better and I get to pick what works because since I started, I'm now trained in hypnosis as well and a different version of EMDR, which is EMI. And it just makes a life change.
Mm.
It makes a huge difference.
Yes, it does. And I can speak firsthand. Even with hypnotherapy, that was, I wasn't super surprised, but it just validated. Oh yeah, okay, that's why I do that. And it's amazing when you make those connections. You can work with people
Mhm.
virtually pretty much anywhere, right?
I can. I can.
How do we find you?
You can go to www.pippna.com or you can call 856-548-9557.
Thank you for sharing today the other side of the couch, if you will, because this is stuff we wonder about when selecting a therapist and going through that process. It's so important to get it out of our heads, and I appreciate it. Thanks for being here today, Miriam.
Thank you. It was great being on.
Likewise, we'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.